This man has 69 personalities, and one of them is a man-eating beast. And yes, his pronouns are they/them, so keep it respectful. So everybody here is happy and celebrating Claire's birthday except for this girl Casey, who's just staring blankly. Apparently, Casey was a mercy invite. Birthday girl is telling her dad that she couldn't invite everybody in our class and not invite Casey, who she says gets in a lot of trouble. Claire wants to go home, but her dad insists that they're not going anywhere until Casey gets picked up. But Casey won't be getting picked up anytime soon, and that's what she has just come to say. She says she'll take the bus, but Claire's dad insists he'll drop her off. They get to the car, and while dad is loading things into their truck, the girls go and sit in the car. Claire and Marcia are at the back, looking at their phones and laughing, while Casey is in the front seat being a little observant. So she's the first person who notices that dad has been attacked by a man who has now entered the car. The girls at the back catch on later, and they're sprayed with some type of sedative. Then just as Casey is about to escape, she gets the same treatment, and the screen goes blank. Next thing we see is the three girls in a room being held hostage by the assailant, Dennis, who now walks in and eventually points to Marcia and says, "I choose you first," then yanks her away from her friend's grasp. As she's struggling, she moves towards Casey, who tells her, "Pee on yourself." Weird statement, but okay. Before he takes her away and shuts the door. He brings her back out just a few seconds later, drops her on the floor of the room, groans, and leaves. Casey's advice worked. Marcia says he wanted her to dance for him, but she peed on herself. She goes off to clean up. Claire joins her while Casey just sits there trembling and reminiscing. She's taken back to when she was a child sitting across the table from her uncle, who's telling her a story of when he was terrified by this freak of nature by the stream. Now she's back to the present, still shaking and trembling. We now cut to a woman, Karen Felcher, who sees the face of the three girls on the screen. Apparently, Claire's dad was drugged and he woke up to find the girls in the car missing. The woman then hurries to her computer where she sees an email from a Barry S, which says, "I need to see you, urgent." She then quickly types something as we cut to the girls. Claire is trying to force the door open. When she sees that she can't, she just starts pacing up and down, trying to figure out a way to attack the guy if he comes back. She suggests they bite him, but Casey says one punch from him would knock them out. Equality moment. Claire says she took karate classes, but Casey tells her that's not going to be very beneficial here. Claire says the only chance they have at survival is if all three of them go crazy on the guy. Marcia is on board and tries to convince Casey to come on board too. Casey just tells him to shut up. Claire can't understand why she's behaving like this. Meanwhile, Casey just drifts off into another memory with her dad. This time they're in the woods and he's teaching her to shoot. When she comes back to the present, she tells the girls she'll let them know when she hears something that makes sense. She tells them they don't even know what's going on yet. Now we see Barry show up at Karen's. She asks him why he said he needed to see her urgently, and he says it was just feelings of being overwhelmed. She's a psychologist. She tells him he's doing great, and in fact, of her other clients with this disorder, he has been the most consistent at his job. So she asks him if something happened, and he just immediately asks her how old she is, just out of the blue. He's concerned about what will happen to him and his kind when she retires or dies. According to him, nobody even knows they exist, so how will they survive? She tells him she has made arrangements with a colleague from Baltimore to take over if anything happens to her. He then asks her if she stays alone. She says yes. He says that must be so lonely. Not cool, man. Finally, as he makes to leave, he asks if there are people who care about his kind, and she says yes. The university even asks her to do a lecture. More people are believing, but Karen still insists something is wrong, so she asks him again, but Barry maintains that he's okay, and this was nothing more than a routine visit. He tells her they'll meet at their usual time and he leaves. Of course, she's not convinced. Anyway, we now see her get called in by a neighbor after seeing a patient off. Her neighbor asks her how she works with her patients. She tells Karen that she doesn't understand how she does it. She doesn't even believe the patients. Back with the girls, they're looking through a peephole and they see Dennis talking with a lady. They shout for help and she walks to the door and opens it. Oh, wait a goddamn minute. It's not a lady. It's just Dennis wearing a turtleneck, a skirt, and heels. But this is merely a different personality of his called Patricia. She tells the girls she'll talk to Dennis, being himself, and assures them that he's not allowed to touch them. The girls are obviously still so confused. He just smiles and leaves. Now we see Karen discussing with a man named Joe. She's trying to make a case for her patients, but the man is obviously not buying it. Back to the girls, and they're now discussing amongst themselves, trying to make sense of what they've just seen. As they're talking, the guy comes in, this time as Dennis, and tells them to keep the bathroom clean. He hands over a bucket of washing supplies and tells them to get to work. Based. As they're kneeling in the bathroom, he tells them Patricia reminded him that he was sent to get them for a reason, promises not to bother them again. Then he turns and leaves. The girls are now even more terrified. What they don't know is that they haven't even seen anything yet. Later at night, Casey's trying to get some rest when she's woken up by Claire and Marcia, who point her to the guy sitting at the door. It's still Dennis, but with a different personality now. He introduces himself as Hedwig and says he has red socks. He tells them someone who has done awful things to people and will do awful things to them is coming for them, and he happens to have blue socks too. Casey asks him some questions and we find out that he is 9 years old, doesn't know much about what the system is doing, and he has to leave before Dennis finds out that he is in the light, whatever that means. As he gets up to leave, Casey stops him and tries to gaslight him into helping them escape. She whispers to him that Dennis and Patricia are trying to get rid of him and tries to entice him with promises of being the best babysitters he could ever ask for. anymore. But just when it looks like Casey's plan is going to work, the 9-year-old has to blow his nose. So he hightails it out of the room to do just that, but not before saying something about how impossible it would be for the girls to escape because it took forever to make the place safe. Casey picks up on this and the girls start banging on the walls and roof to find any evidence that the room has been made escape-proof. Claire's the one who finds something on the ceiling, knocking it open with a shoe. She does admit that Casey was right, so I guess that's a win for Casey. Anyway, what's the thing that Claire finds? A means of escape apparently, but just before she can pull herself through, Dennis comes back. He doesn't get to enter the room though, because Casey and Marcia hold him off at the door, giving Claire the time to pull through. But just as she does, Dennis pushes the door to the room open, and he does it pretty easily, even with the two ladies doing their best. Next we see Claire crawl through the vents in the ceiling and try to navigate her way through the belly of the house. Unfortunately for her, Dennis had followed her, and he finds her hiding in a locker. He asks her to come out of the locker, and he insists that he's trying to be good, and then he proceeds to lock her in a room. And by lock, I mean screw the door shut, just like my dad used to do. We then see him go to the other room to fix the ceiling. He tells the girls that they won't be seeing their friend again, and then asks Marcia to remove her pants because they were dirty, apparently. Next we see Karen giving some kind of lecture online on the nature of DID, dissociative identity disorder. She poses an interesting question to our audience, asking them whether DID is the ultimate doorway to what we currently do not know or what we see as supernatural. Right after that, we see Barry going out to have a discussion with Karen. Or is this Barry? Or is this Dennis? Karen doesn't think it's Barry, but maybe Barry says he is Barry. This is the second day in a row that Barry is emailing for an unscheduled visit, so Karen thinks something is off. She thinks that it has to be one of Orwell, Jade, Samuel, or Hedwig that did the emailing, so she has to talk to one of them. Barry tells her she can't, because he told them he wanted to spend the day with her. They continue with the Barry not Barry back and forth until Karen hits on a number of interesting guesses. First, she guesses that she's actually talking to Dennis, because he had been very particular about the placement of a dish, and Dennis is the one with OCD, not Barry. Second, she guesses that Dennis and Patricia are both in control of the system, and both of them had been banned because of their beliefs. But certainly not Barry insists that he is Barry, so Karen relents and apologizes. Then we see by no means Barry go down the stairs. If this is at all confusing, I'm right there with you. In the next scene, Karen is checking Discount Barry out on the CCTV trying to figure out what Dennis/Patricia is up to. Back at the house, Marcia is trying to convince Casey that they need to find a way of escape, but Casey takes a really quick trip down memory lane instead, and in the memory, she's with her dad and uncle, and the uncle looks really suspicious. Casey wakes up to Patricia presenting her with a meal, but instead of allowing her to eat, Patricia brushes her hair while Marcia at the other side of the room tries to eat. And when Patricia's done brushing Casey's hair, she moves them to the kitchen where they then get to eat their sandwich. Finally, Marcia asks if Claire could come eat with them, but Patricia refuses. Instead, she serenades them with music, starts to make them another sandwich, and entertains them with some trivia. Casey indulges her with some trivia of her own, but Marcia is more interested in getting the hell out of there. Marcia tries to get Casey on board with her escape plan, but Casey not only refuses, she tries to communicate to Marcia that trying to escape was a bad idea, but Marcia is willing to take her chances. So with Patricia's back turned, Marcia hits her on the back with a chair and makes for the exit. Patricia immediately tries to give chase but is stalled by Casey. However, that doesn't do much as Patricia quickly instructs Casey to go to her room and shut the door. Next, we see that Marcia is trapped as the room where she runs to has a locked door on the other end, and Patricia has found her. With a knife to Marcia's stomach, Patricia tells her that she was chosen because she had always been protected and had never known suffering. Then he proceeds to lock her in a separate room, so at this point, the three girls are in different rooms. Next, we see Dennis talking to Casey, and guess what? They haven't seen the worst yet. Apparently, Dennis is not the worst, because he tells Casey that the beast is coming for her. He also gets really bothered about a crumb on her shirt, and his reaction seems to transport Casey back in time to another camping trip with her dad. When she comes to, she finds that Hedwig spent the night with her. He kind of explains to her how the systems work. So, Barry, the one who visits the psychologist, is supposed to be the one who determines which personality comes to light, but Hedwig can, apparently, wish himself to the light, regardless of what Barry wants, which is why Dennis and Patricia allow him with them. While Casey is still trying to mine some useful information, 9-year-old Hedwig asks to kiss her, and she isn't even his first choice, because he wanted to kiss Marcia, but she's in trouble. With possible escape in her mind, Casey allows it, if that can be considered a kiss. Hedwig probably thinks they're together now, because he starts telling her all this stuff about having a CD player close to his window, and Kanye West being his favorite artist. That aged poorly. Casey tries to get him to take her to his room, but he says he will tell on her. So she lures him into a false sense of security by giving him a truth of hers. Apparently she messes up in school on purpose, so that she can get sent into detention, where she can be alone. Relatable. He agrees to take her to his room, but that would have to be after Dennis is done with his getting ready ritual, and then he leaves. It looks like it's the next day, and absolutely not Barry is with his psychologist Karen, again, having messaged her with an emergency the night before. Karen theorizes that a certain case of assault might have something to do with the fact that Barry isn't the one sitting with her now. The incident, which saw him get sussy with two teenage girls, was initially dismissed as a prank, and Barry and a number of the other personalities agreed, but Karen now believes that Dennis did not like it because it reminded him of the time that they were abused when they were younger, which is why he's the one in the light now, trying to protect the system. Again, whatever that means. Karen also says something about how Dennis and Patricia have manufactured the beast to scare the others, but not at all Barry insists that he is Barry. She then tells him that she has the ability to use Kevin's full name to bring him to the front, which seems to strike a chord with phony Barry. Kevin is the core identity, by the way, but she says that she won't because that would cause chaos amongst the alters. Karen tells him that she doesn't see Dennis as evil, but necessary. Shows what you know, psychologist. Then she asks him again if he is Dennis, and we see Dennis drop the act and be the Dennis that he truly is. Finally, Dennis finally agrees that he and Patricia have taken charge because none of the other personalities can protect Kevin, and Kevin himself is supposedly weak. Karen asks Dennis when he came into existence and when he and Patricia decided to become a team, but he refuses to answer. Then she asks him whether he still believes in the beast, and he also refuses to answer. We find out that neither Dennis nor Patricia have met the beast because he is not an alter, but a fantasy, or at least that's what Karen thinks. Dennis doesn't give us anything. In the next scene, we see that 9-year-olds actually keep their promise because Hedwig comes to take Casey to his room. He dances for a while, and Casey tries to love it, like she has a choice. Unfortunately, she finds out that his window is not actually a real one, and she can't hide her disappointment. The ever-perceptive Hedwig picks up on this and is not happy. Casey begs him to get her out of the house, but Hedwig refuses because the beast will make him cool when he comes. She continues to beg him to show her something cool, and then he relents and gives her Dennis's walkie-talkie, which he stole. Casey uses it to try to find help, but the person on the other side thinks it's a prank. Meanwhile, Patricia has come to the light, and she looks dangerously calm. She doesn't do anything though, just asks Casey to make the praying hands, walks her back to her room, and then tells her that Dennis will explain what happened that evening. As Patricia leaves, Casey notices a nail on the floor and picks it. Then in comes Dennis. He gives her a quick explanation of who the beast is, and then tells her that tonight is a sacred night. Next, we see that Casey has taken another trip down to memory lane to when she was a child. This time, her uncle is calling her to play animals, threatening to tell her dad that she's not being nice if she doesn't play. Uh-oh. This then fades into the next scene where she is pointing a gun at said uncle. He seems to remember that he is her uncle at this point, a fact that he conveniently forgot earlier, but he reminds her of that fact and then quickly grabs the gun. And then Casey comes back to the present crying. Meanwhile, we see that Karen has received a lot of emails from Barry, all with the message, "We need you." The scene then cuts to a creepily organized looking Dennis leaving the house, only to be waylaid by Karen, who, I must say, is either way too brave or way too trusting because she went to this man's house alone. Karen tells him that one of the others just emailed her and tries to talk him down from doing something stupid. She gets him to let her into the house, where she asks him who he was going to meet. He evades that question and talks to her about what Kevin's mother did to him instead. We find out that Dennis arrived in the light when Kevin was about 3 years old in order to protect him from his mother, and he did that by making sure that everything was spotless and perfect, hence the OCD. Karen tries to pacify him, telling him that there are now other ways to help Kevin, so that he doesn't get lost in the system. She then tries to get him to be more honest with her, and he ends up confessing that the beast is real. He just emerged. Dennis mentions that the beast is much bigger than all the other personalities, including himself, and then goes on to describe a really fantastical creature. Karen refuses to believe that such a personality can exist, insisting that there have to be limits to what a human being can become. Well, the beast is merely built different. Sweet old Karen continues to sit there, asking Dennis what he means about the eating of the impure young, but he just keeps speaking in parables. Then she asks him who he is going to meet, and he says, him. Karen decides to switch things up, asking Dennis to come in for a session the next day, and stands to take her leave, but then he asks her to use his bathroom while putting a piece of cloth into a crevice in the door. She walks down the hall as if to go to the bathroom, but manages to find the room where Claire is, and as she stands there sobbing while Claire cries for help, Dennis finds her. She tries to rationalize with him, but Dennis, backed up by Patricia, is past being reasoned with, so he chloroforms her. Meanwhile, Claire looks to be energized after seeing Karen, and encourages Marcia, who is next door, to look for something that might help them escape. Dennis, on the other hand, goes to the mall, but is quickly replaced by Patricia, who picks up some flowers. We cut back to the house where Karen is coming to, and Claire and Marcia are still trying to escape, and then cut back again to where the system is waiting at the train station, and we see the switch from Patricia to Dennis. Back at the house, Casey manages to pick the lock to her room, but encounters another locked door. Thankfully, there is a computer in this new room, but unfortunately it doesn't have internet access. The other girls are doing their best to get out of the house as well. Well, technically, Marcia is trying to pick the lock with the coat hanger while Claire is offering words of encouragement. A lot of them, so teamwork. We cut to Dennis at the train stop laying a bouquet of flowers on the floor, and then cut back to Casey where she's still at the computer. There's still no internet access, but she has found some files labeled with the names of the different alters. The files are video recordings made by the different alters, and she opens Orwell's and Jade's, but it's Barry's that contains useful info. In Barry's recording, he talks about being worried that one of the alters was stealing the light from him. He also talks about being scared of what the Horde might do. And by the way, the Horde is made up of all the evil alters. Next, we see Dennis finally get on the train, which is empty and dark. He strips, huffs a little, and then crouches. We are taken back to the house where we see the girl still trying to escape. Then it is back to the crouching person who is most likely not Dennis anymore. This has to be the beast, because he literally climbs on the train and ran across it really quickly. Even a trained police dog is really scared. Anyway, everybody in the house is trying to escape in their own little way, but none of them has quite made it yet. Okay, it doesn't look like Karen is trying to escape. She's scribbling something, but she's the one that the beast gets to first. She picks up a bread knife to try to defend herself, but then she gets a glimpse of the beast, and he is ripped, not in the fun way. The beast thanks her for her service to that point, and then hugs her. She tries to convince him to leave her alone by jabbing him with the knife. Those muscles are made of steel. The knife breaks, so he just continues to hug her till he hugs the light life out of her. How sweet. Meanwhile, Casey finds out where the keys are from Barry's video and manages to let herself out of the room. She wanders down the halls trying to find the others. She opens one of the doors and sees Marcia's bloodied body, and then finds Claire in the next room. But Claire is not alone. The beast is there with her, feasting on her, and not in the fun way. So it becomes really clear to Casey that she has to find her way out of the house. She stumbles into the living room where she finds Karen dead on the floor. Then she tries to open the front door, but of course she can't get it open. Meanwhile, it looks like the beast is done with Claire and is looking for the only other living person in the house. But Casey sees the note that Karen was scribbling at the time, and it basically asks whoever is reading to say Kevin's full name, Kevin Wendell Crumb, which Karen could have done earlier, but then the movie would have been over way too soon. Well, it looks like the beast, which is a human by the way, must have been on something, because the next thing we see is him scaling the walls like a webless Spider-Man or something, and he's making all these growling noises to really sell it. Talk about acting. Casey proceeds to call Kevin's full name, and it looks like it's doing something to the human beast. The next scene is a flashback and we hear Kevin's mother calling his full name the way that mothers do. That lets you know you are in big trouble. But Kevin's mother is on a whole other level. We go back to the present day and it looks like Kevin is back. He asks Casey what happened and then he sees Karen on the floor. Casey tells him that he killed her, and he says he doesn't remember anything. The last thing he remembers was being on a bus on September 18th, 2014. Kevin tells Casey where to find a shotgun that he bought and asks her to kill him. But the different alters try to force their way to the light to convince Casey not to kill Kevin. Hedwig is finally able to force his way through because of his superpower, and as he talks, Casey tries to find the gun. She finds the gun, then turns around and comes face to face with Patricia. Casey tries once again to call Kevin's full name, but Patricia says that they have to put him to sleep, and he won't be able to hear her. Patricia tells Casey of the beast's plan to get even more unworthy young, and then gives way to it. Casey manages to burst down through the door where Karen stuffed a piece of cloth. She runs through the house and comes to a chest of school-like lockers, where she picks up a pack of cartridges. The beast catches up to her, and there's a bit of a scuffle, but as Casey picks up the gun to shoot, she doesn't see the beast anymore. So, with bruises here and there, she continues to find a way of escape. Meanwhile, there's a flashback to when she lost her dad and her uncle became her legal guardian. The same legal guardian who wanted to play animals the last time. He wasted no time warning her not to give him any trouble. This is dark. Back to present day, the beast is chanting some self-praises while Casey tries to shoot him, but it's difficult for her to do that because the beast has broken many of the lights and he is really quick on his feet. He warns her that bullets cannot harm him, but she decides to take her chances and manages to land 2 shots. But he was actually telling the truth. Man is built different. He goes down for a few seconds but stands right back up, as ferocious as ever. He pries the bars of the gate apart. Just as it looks like he's about to pounce, he spots the marks on her belly, marks left by her animal of an uncle. And I guess it is twisted that it is those very marks that save her. The beast believes that she is pure because of those marks, because according to him, the broken are the more evolved. Good news for me. He leaves her there, and in the next scene, we see an old man taking a smoke. He notices Casey where the beast left her. Then he opens the gates and helps her out of the place. As they come out, we see that the place where the girls were hidden is a zoo. Casey is seen by paramedics, while the police check out the system's hideout. Then her uncle comes for her, but it looks like she maybe doesn't want to go with him. In the next scene, we see Dennis, Patricia, and Hedwig converse with one another and plan for the future as the system takes in the damage to their body in a mirror. They are completely submitted to the leadership of the beast. In a post-title of the movie scene, the TV in a diner is showing the news where the reporter is talking about Kevin as a suspected murderer who suffers from DID. She mentions that no one is sure whether or not he's alive, and that the beast is rumored to be a combination of the different animals in the zoo where Kevin worked. We also learn that he is called the Horde because of his many personalities, and then one of the waitresses notes that the story is similar to something that happened in the past. Apparently, a while back, there was a crazy guy in a wheelchair that did almost the same things and was given a funny name as well. She doesn't remember the name, but that's alright. The nice gentleman beside her supplies the name. It's Mr. Glass, and the nice gentleman is Bruce Willis, so nothing to see there. Moral of the story? They/them.